Danny, let's go for it. 10 to 15 minutes. And then what we'd like to do is give you an opportunity to ask some questions to our wonderful panel this evening. Danny Brennan from Maryland.
Thank you, Steve. Hi, how's everybody doing? Good. Can you hear me okay? Yep. There's a lot of people in this room, huh? That's my prison ID. You know, I've been kicked out of, my name's Danny, I'm a drug addict, I'm an alcoholic. I'm in my 5th year of recovery, and I love being sober. I love being clean, I have a wonderful life. Addiction is a very, very, very powerful disease, right? We know that, right? I'm assuming everybody here are pretty much treatment professionals for the most part, right? And probably a lot of us in recovery as well. So we know how powerful addiction is, right? But I think that a lot of us here, probably most of us here, know that God and love is much more powerful than the disease of addiction, right? And that's my prison ID, my last prison ID. That was the day that I left prison. They give you, in Maryland, they give you a release card, and you can take it on the back. It has a little 45-day stamp on it, and you can take it to the MVA or to the Department of Vital Statistics to get identification. And but I left in handcuffs from prison and was transported to a place called Second Genesis in Maryland. Some of you may be familiar with Second G. It's a therapeutic community, a long-time therapeutic community. Long-term, it's been in, I think they've been there since the early 60s. I think it's a great name, Second Genesis. It's a wonderful name. I want to take a minute and just thank Steve for asking me to come here. And Lance, it's been a pleasure to meet you, and your wife Amy, and everybody that I've had an opportunity to meet, Harry. My girlfriend Debbie came up with me from Maryland. We decided to drive up. It's about an 8-hour drive. And we don't get a lot of time together. I work for a place called Right Turn. I happen to work as what we call a court liaison in marketing. And I go to court with offenders every day. And the judge generally asks me how they're doing. And the person looks at me like, what are you doing here? I know a lot of judges, unfortunately, from I've been on the wrong side of the bench a lot of times, and now I'm on the right side of the bench. And you know what? It keeps it real fresh, and also get an opportunity to share with some guys in the early stages, because the guys that I'm seeing in court are generally in the district court in Maryland, which is relatively, you're looking at a couple years. If you're looking at any time, it's a couple years, but you'll be home within 2 years in the district court. And I spent a lot of time in the circuit court in Maryland, which means that you probably won't be home for a long time, maybe decades. And so I'm very, very grateful to be here. I'd like to thank Bonnie, who's back here, Steve's friend. She has worked really hard to pull this off, and I'd just like to recognize you and thank you for what you're doing. So, Lance talked about making a difference. I'm also in school. I'm finishing up school this year. I go to school full-time. I work full-time. I'm a musician. I rediscovered my love of music while I was in prison. I had a bass guitar sent in. And in prison in Maryland, Division of Corrections, you can actually get stuff like that sent in. And so I had a guitar sent in. I hadn't played in years, but I got a chance to meet a guy, Rory, here tonight. What a nice guy. And I was just thinking, you know what? We already make a difference just by staying sober. Because the difference that I'm making today is like, when Rory leaves here, he's still going to have his bass guitar, right? And all of you that are in here, while you're in here, right, I'm not in the parking lot breaking into your car. We're breaking into your house. And Steve and I've been kicked out of a lot of places, right? But Dr. Steve and I do have one thing in common. I too have never been kicked out of Parliament. Yeah. So I'm in my 5th year of sobriety. I absolutely love my life. I have a life beyond my wildest dreams. I figured. He asked me about a couple months ago if I would come up here, and I said, yeah, of course I will. I would be honored. And then I found out there's another organization. I work for a place called Right Turn that I happen to have been through 6 times. I've been in treatment. I started getting real quick. I started using when I was 10 years old. I grew up in Brooklyn and South Baltimore, in the city. I started using real young. My family was deeply affected by alcoholism. My grandfather was an alcoholic. He had 16 siblings. Molly Farrell was his mother, and she could drink every last one of them under the table, right? And my dad like fell in, right in line. My dad was a low bottom alcoholic. He got sober after his third time through the place called the Turk House in Baltimore at 49. Started coming to meetings in 1972. He got sober in 83. So it took him 11 years to get his first 6 months, and he stayed sober for 15 years. 15 years, 4 months, and 19 days. He died sober. He beat the disease. Right? So I also like to say this. I've learned that like if you have to have a disease, right? Addiction, alcoholism, it's actually one of the better ones to have. You know? Because like if I had terminal brain cancer and I'm in a wheelchair, on a respirator, and I'm not going to get better, and you know, I have a friend of mine, a guy named Michael Vogelstein, who has a nephew who has terminal brain cancer. There's nothing they can do. He's just, you know, in a chair on a respirator until he dies, and he'll probably die in 25 or so. Addiction, we can live long, productive lives, happy, joyous, and free from the disease of addiction if we simply don't drink, don't drug, treat the disease, right? So I started using when I was 10. I started going to jail when I was 10. I got locked up the first time for theft. I went to the Maryland Children's Center for boys for 21 days. That's not the Maryland Children's Center for boys. That's actually, that's Hagerstown. And I had a choice. I was on the wing with these guys, right? And I actually became really good friends with a couple of them. And better to be friends with them than enemies with them. But, you know, I had a choice to make, right? When I'm in prison again, I learned from a little kid, right? I learned how to survive in the system. I was, you know, went to the Maryland Children's Center, I went to the Waxman Center, ended up in Montrose School for Boys at 13. I came home from Maryland Training School for Boys when I was 17. And, you know, I spent about almost 5 years locked up as a juvenile. So I learned how to fight, I learned how to talk shit, and, you know, I learned how to be a little punk thug, right? And I got pretty good at it. I learned how to con, I learned how to manipulate, I learned how to play the game, and I learned how to do what I have to do to get by, right? Because I can get by, I know how to play the game. So I learned really young how to play the game of life, right? And really, the truth is I wasn't really that good at it. I was never really too good at the game of life. I thought I was good at the game of life, right? I'm actually getting better at it today, right? Because I got somebody guiding me, leading the way that I rely on, right? And that's God. So anyway, you know, around 17, I came home from training school and continued to use. I never addressed addiction. You know, nobody ever. What I learned in as a juvenile, what I learned locked up as a kid, right, was how to be a better criminal, right? I learned how to survive in that environment. I learned about I already knew about the streets, and I learned how to get by. How to do what I had to do. I am the most compliant client that you will ever have. Right? I will do everything you tell me to do. I will follow every rule. Because what I want to do, really, right, when I'm sitting in my jail cell, when I'm transferred from like the county jail down to the Division of Corrections, down to what they call MRDCC, Maryland Reception Diagnostic Center, it's where you know you're getting ready to shipped out to one of Maryland state prisons, and there's no telling where you could go. My security level actually has risen over the years, and it's not good. And I'm going somewhere like this. In this picture here, none of these guys are ever coming home from prison. Okay? They're never coming home. And they're all lifers, and they're staying, you know, they've been down, this guy's been down since 1977. And man, can